Welcome to Plant Prescription, the one and only houseplant podcast from Costa Farms. Happy Earth Day, everybody. We are very happy to have a special Earth Day edition. As usual, I'm Justin. I'm joined by Michelle, our IPM manager, and we have a very special guest. Erika from our sustainability team is joining us. Erika is our sustainability specialist. She was a former intern who moved up, and we are so happy to have her on board. Hey, Erica, thank you for spending your Earth Day with us.
Thank you, Justin. I'm so excited to be here.
So, other than the podcast, are you guys doing anything special today to celebrate Earth Day?
Well, I'll just jump right in. I am planting in my garden because the weather has finally shaped up a little bit over here, and I have a bunch of things that I've been itching to get into the ground. I'm also recruiting my poor boyfriend to help me dig some stuff up. It's good for him, good for us. So we will be sweating in the garden later today, which I'm very excited about. What about
Excellent. And
you,
how about
Erica?
For me, Earth Day is a big thing. I like to celebrate Earth Month. We do have a fun activity with our colleagues where we'll be planting a butterfly garden behind our headquarters building. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I have some people signed up and we're getting ready to get our hands dirty. And over the weekend, I'll be participating in a beach cleanup because it's spring break season and a lot of people are leaving trash on our beaches. So we're going to go out, pick up some trash, and then enjoy some sun and sand.
beach sounds like a pretty perfect place to do a cleanup, says
Yes.
the guy in Oregon where it snowed yesterday.
Oh no. I'm sorry that your
Uh,
winter's so long.
All right, so we're going to talk sustainability today in honor of Earth Day. Um, and instead of getting questions from the community, we thought we would make this a fun conversation. Um, are you up for that, Erica, Michelle?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm ready.
Fantastic. All right. So we have touched with this a little bit on the podcast before. Um, we use a lot of coir here at Costa Farms, coconut coir. More than 85% of our plants are grown in coir. And there is a nice sustainability message behind that. Um, do you wanna help enlighten us further on that, Erica?
Yes. And so along with coconut coir, which is as you mentioned, a byproduct of the coconut fiber industry. We also use hydrofiber in our mix, which is great for water retention as well as drainage because there's a lot more aeration that goes into this material. And so um, it makes it easier to not um, create an environment for root rot, which we don't want in our plants.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. One of the bane of our existence is over in IPM, which I'm sure we'll get to. Uh, but yeah, Pythium is really bad. And hydrofiber is really cool because it does kind of create these like little air spaces. And coco coir, to me, coco coir just feels really nice as well. Um, so aside from, the water retention and things like that, are there any other things that cocoa or the obviously saving us from using so much peat, which is a quote unquote non-renewable, it's renewable, but it takes forever to renew. So it's,
It does.
for lack of a better term, non-renewable-ish resource. What other benefits does using coco coir have for us?
Coco coir allows us to use whatever is left over from the coconut fiber industry, which is great. And hydrofiber is a byproduct of the wood milling industry. So both of these materials make it less necessary to have to extract any new materials that would take longer to produce, such as the peat that you mentioned.
I feel even better about the core mix now than I did before.
I've started to see that a lot in stores as well. There are a lot of consumers are using a lot of coconut byproducts now. So it's really exciting to be kind of one of the leaders and right up there in the industry as one of the larger producers using this kind of resource.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of I know there's a lot of focus on um, peat because it takes
Yes.
so long to renew. And I think one of the other messages is that it's harvested from the bogs. And while some people say it's harvested in a sustainable manner where they're only taking a couple of inches a year, there's still an ecological impact on that bog.
Absolutely.
Any of the wildlife or other critters that make that bog their home, they're being disruptive during that harvesting time. Whereas coconuts,
They're
yeah.
coconuts. Hey, question for you. So I know that there's a limited number of bogs out there. There's one in Canada, right, Justin? And then
Yep, Canada is
there's,
where most of our peat in North America comes from. I know there are also a number of bogs in Europe where
yeah.
yeah, where that peat tends to be sourced from.
Yeah, so it's not like there's bogs everywhere. There's only a couple. And when they're harvested, there really isn't many options out there for them.
Yeah, so just to speak on how Justin mentioned about the bogs, people going into the bogs to extract the peat moss. One thing that a lot of people don't think about is how a lot of these different ecosystems or different areas of land, forests, and things like that, water, they are considered carbon sinks. So when we go in there and we extract the peat moss, it releases the carbon that these bogs have been capturing for years. And so that's a really positive impact that we're having either directly or indirectly on the environment. Just making sure that habitats are staying intact and making sure that the carbon that's being sequestered stays sequestered and doesn't get released into the atmosphere. And going to speaking on the potting mix that we use, our cactus and succulent mix, we've been trying to reduce the amount of sand that we're mining in order to put into our blends, because the coconut coir is the mixture of the coconut coir and hydrofiber are working hand in hand to reduce significantly the amount of sand that we're using. And so it provides a great amount of drainage and water retention for the cactus and succulent. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's crazy though. So, so you're no, I do it all the time. So you're saying that cacti and succulents, which are dry crops, are able to grow even in the cocoa coir hydrofiber mix, which tells me that it actually does have really good drainage.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
pretty
really
cool.
interesting. Yes, it's nice to find alternatives to do things in a new way where people don't in the past have kind of done things the same way. And then so it's nice to just go to start going through that path of innovation and always trying to find what's the next best thing
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
sustainability.
And you brought up the carbon sequestration. See, I did it too in the peat bogs. And that got me thinking. I was really excited a few years ago when Costa started using solar panels
Yeah.
in Miami to be able to reduce carbon footprint there. How's that project going?
So yes, for solar panels, we have a couple of different locations in our Miami operations where we have solar panels installed, which are headquarters, our potting area, and our shipping areas. So those panels generate about 1,700,000 kilowatt hours per year, which is enough to power about 155 houses for a full year.
Okay.
Well, I guess
Uh,
that Florida sun, they don't call it sunny Florida for nothing when it comes to solar panels. Try
True.
doing that in Oregon, Justin.
Actually, there are solar farms popping up all over the place here.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
As
Okay.
solar technology improves,
mhm.
um, you know, it's it's easier to harvest even when you're not getting the direct sun. On my last trip to headquarters too, I noticed that there are some nice ways to reduce energy usage, like the motion sensors in the rooms to turn on the lights so that when people leave, you don't have to worry about accidentally forgetting to turn off the lights. What else is Costa doing to try to reduce waste, whether it's electricity or waste in some of the products we use?
And so when it comes to waste reduction, my favorite revelation as of recently was that we have one of our operations up in the Carolinas. They installed a tray washer, which is a machine that washes the trays where we place our seedlings in prior to repotting them. And in using this, I believe in using this from January to the end of March of this year, we've already saved 130,000 trays from being sent to our recycling company. This was actually a misspeak. We reused 30,000 trays, which is lovely. I always advocate for recycling. I feel like it's important to give things a new life, but when you can reduce, even take even sending things off miles away to be recycled and you can just continuously reuse the same materials, I think that's a big win, and it saves a lot of resources and even a lot of time, I would say. And so that's something that we have going on. We also are revamping our overall waste management program. We're building a a culture of making our employees think twice when it comes to disposing of waste, either at the industrial level when it's cardboard and greenhouse plastics and things like that. We're constantly trying to find ways to reuse our materials, whether it's pallets or as we mentioned, the trays before. We're just looking for the most appropriate alternatives and avoiding sending things to the landfill as much as we can.
I've seen some pretty incredible statistics about like the amount of plastic and cardboard that we recycle on a yearly basis.
Yes, I believe the numbers for 2021 were about 2,000 tons, 2,200 tons of plastic that recycled when it comes to our pots and trays that we use for our plants. That's about 78.2 million 16-ounce plastic bottles, which is amazing and I think pretty commendable. I think that it's a great opportunity to reduce waste, and also at different retailers, they also have some recycling programs. If you bring your plant pots, if for example, if you bought a beautiful plant, decided to transplant it into your garden, you can take that same pot and grow something new if you'd like, or you can take it back to the place that you bought the plant from and they can recycle it for you if needed.
That's excellent.
I did not know that. I am a big advocate of reusing pots because I have so many plants. I typically run out of pots. That's the first thing that I run out of. But that's interesting. I didn't know stores would do that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
I know that we've talked about integrated pest management as well, and how we are looking to be more green overall. Michelle, do you want to talk about some of the things in IPM that we're doing in the days, weeks, months ahead, how we may be reducing pesticides and otherwise decreasing our footprint and being greener on the plant health side of the business?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I talk about IPM pretty much every podcast, but it's nice to be able to talk about it as a whole. So, IPM stands for Integrated Pest Management. What that means is like you have a pest that could be a disease or it could be an insect or a mite. They're different. Insect and mites are different. We don't get into that right now. So, you have a pest and you need to get rid of it. Oftentimes, historically, the method, the preferred method, or the most common method in larger producers has been to approach it chemically, and those work very well for certain situations. The problem is that a lot of the chemicals that have been used over the past decade, 2 decades, more than that, ever since we have been growing plants and using chemicals, a lot of those have lost efficacy, which is a fancy way of saying that these pests, be it the disease or the fungus, or the bacteria, or the insect and mite, those have developed resistance to some of these chemicals, not all, but some of the chemicals are not working as well as they used to anymore because a bug or a fungus, all of a sudden there was a gene in it that just switched or moved, or an allele. I don't know. I promised my professor not to talk more about genetics. Something happened in its DNA.
Yet every time you do.
I know, it's so bad. I guarantee I'm going to talk about, you know what, on this at some point too. I won't say it because I'm not going to jinx myself, but I know it's probably going to come up. So where was I saying? So anyway, their genetics, something small changes in their DNA, and poof, all of a sudden they are now resistant to this active ingredient in this chemical. Therefore, all of their offspring are also resistant. And so going way back on what I was originally saying, historically, there have been a lot of chemicals that have been used to control the pests. And although that worked really well for a while, in some cases, it doesn't work that well as it used to because of this reason. Now, along with the chemical applications, there are physical ways of removing the pests too. For example, if a plant has a disease and it's covered in a fungus, physically you can just remove that plant from the area and you have decreased your pest pressure. Voila. Also sticky cards, those yellow things that constantly get stuck in your hair. If you're a plant fanatic and you put them up, those also are a physical method of removing the pests. So there's physical, there's chemical. Sanitation is a really big part of IPM. We'll get to why I'm talking about all these things in a second. So cleaning your areas. If you've had a disease, cleaning that whole thing down and sanitizing it, like basically killing the fungus in that area so it doesn't reinfect plants. And then the last pillar, and my most favorite pillar, is biological. And this is using good bugs, good mites, good fungus, good bacterial byproducts. Don't get too scared with that, to fight and kill the bad pests. And so I've all of those four things, chemical, sanitation, biological, and physical practices, those all go into IPM because it is called integrated pest management, meaning we're not just focusing on trying to do one thing and one thing only. We approach a problem from four different angles, and depending on the scenario, how many plants have this, what time of year is it, honestly, what's the weather, so on and so forth. A lot of things go into making these decisions on how we're going to approach this pest. But when and if possible, we are trying to rely more on the biological aspect. And in using the biologicals, the good bugs, good fungi, it really is more of a preventative approach. And so we are constantly putting out predatory mites, lacewing, nematodes. We're constantly putting these things out into the growing areas, into the houses on our crops in order to prevent any pests from getting a foothold. So, so yes, IPM is an integrative approach that includes all of those things, but we are trying, in North Carolina, we are using a biological IPM approach. And I put that in front of it because we're using a lot of biologicals and we're being very preventative in our approach with biologicals. I will say there is a preventative approach using chemicals as well. There are some biorational products, especially like good fungus and good bacterial byproducts. We're not spraying bacteria. It's a byproduct that the bacteria makes on the crops as well. And that, even though it's not like a bug or anything with legs, it's still a really good preventative approach because these fungi will either outcompete other fungi or these fungi will kill bugs. God, what can a fungi do? You just riddle me that. They can do everything. Where was I going with this, Justin? That is IPM.
So what kind of results have we seen like in North Carolina there?
Okay. All right. Results. So in North Carolina, that's where we've kind of spearheaded the biological IPM program. Although certainly other farms are incorporating a lot more biologicals every year. But in North Carolina in particular, where we've been running a biological program for 3+ years, we've actually seen a huge reduction in our insecticide usage. So we, hooray, have been able to reduce our insecticides chemical by 50%, which is really big because, it's a significant number. Not
It's
only
half.
half, I know. Not only have we been able to reduce our insecticides, we've also, and this, I can't measure this quantifiably. It's more of a feeling and an observation. We have seen a lot more native biologicals and beneficials coming into our facilities now. Now, if they were there before or not, it not in, at least they haven't been seen in the numbers that we're seeing them currently. So we're seeing a lot of native ladybugs come in. We're seeing a lot of native aureus, a lot of native syrphid flies, which are hoverflies. They're the little things that look like bees and they fly like hummingbirds. Those are actually, well, Suzanne's listening to this, the bug lady, she's gonna say, no, 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 be correct. Some of those hoverflies are beneficials. Not all of them. There's a billion species, I'm exaggerating, of syrphid flies, and a chunk of those are beneficials. So the flies come in their nectar feeders, and then they lay their eggs where there are aphids. Their eggs hatch and they hatch into like little larvae, and the larva will eat the aphids. By the way, in case you ever want to know, in case you're looking it up and you don't know what you're looking at, the larvae essentially look like bird poop. So
There
rule
it
of
is.
thumb, I know, God, you're right. So okay, Erika, this is your first time on this podcast, but I normally talk about genetics and then backtrack because I'm not allowed to talk about genetics because my college professor pretty much forbid me from talking or doing anything with genetics. The second thing I usually always talk about is poop. Just did it again.
It's
Um,
important. It's an important thing. Whale
yeah, I
poop is
mean,
really important when it comes to the environment as well. So,
and I'm not a mother, but I know a lot of parents are very focused on their child's poop because it's a really good indicator. That's not what we're talking about in this, though. I don't know
yeah.
anything about it. Don't pretend to. Hoverfly larvae look like little bird poops. Essentially, a lot of the biologicals, ladybugs aside, because they're adorable, everybody loves ladybug adults, the larvae are not as cute. Most beneficials kind of look a little ugly. And I hate to say that because I love beneficials, but a lot of them just don't look as cute as like an aphid.
I
Yeah.
love ladybug larvae. Like to
Yes.
me, they look like what they're supposed to look like. They are warriors.
Yeah. Have you seen ladybug larva?
I
I have
have.
not.
Oh, okay.
I have to
So
look it up.
Justin, do you want to describe what a ladybug larva looks like since you love them?
It is it's like in my mind, and I am probably going to be made fun of for this.
Hmm.
And I'll take it, but it's almost the cross between one of those really spiky dinosaurs and an alligator.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And it's
Wholeheartedly
black and
agree.
orange, so it's these really kind of
Depends on the
black
species.
with okay. The ones I've
Black,
seen
orange,
are
yellow.
black
Yeah.
with a little bit of orange spotting on the sides.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder
And
if I've seen one and just thought it was some sort of little other critter. Hmm.
that's the sad reality for a lot of beneficials, which maybe we'll get into on another episode. There's a lot to unpack here, but a lot of the
Yeah.
beneficials, I believe, get mistaken for pests on a regular
Mm.
basis. Because they just look evil. And if you see it on your plant and you think it looks evil looking, you think it's going after your plant most of the time, but there's a chance it's not. It's a shame. But okay, going back onto the Costa track. So we have been using beneficials. We're starting to see a lot more natives pop up, which is really exciting because,
So
as
important.
natives, right. And they live there, they know how to handle the rain. They know the seasons. They know the pests that are oftentimes coming in from the outside into our greenhouse. So they know them. They are evolved to hunt and kill them or parasitize them. We'll get into that another day. So having these natives around is incredibly helpful, beneficial, if I dare say so, because they they're just really, really good at what they do. And so we've honestly, I don't know, I'm going to say it. We've started looking at kind of um, keeping our local beneficials around more. And we've been doing this through two different ways. Number one, ladybugs is something that we are starting to grow. And I won't get on my ladybug rant about the ladybugs in mesh baggies, even though it is Earth Day, and I feel like I should. Should I,
Yeah.
Justin, really quickly? Because it's
No,
Earth
I
Day.
think, well, now that you started it, I think we have to.
Yes, we have
Okay.
to hear it. I
Okay.
get
All right.
absolutely mesmerized hearing you talk about our IPM program. It's just so, I guess, not inspiring, but it's just lovely to hear how, nature itself can kind of cure itself. And once it sees
Yeah.
that, for example, as you mentioned, the native species, once the native species see that they're coming back, because a lot of times in places, some of these species get eradicated because, like you said, people see these species and they think that they're trying to kill the plants, so they try to get rid of them. So it's nice that they're able to find this safe environment and they can just come back and do their thing and just work hand in hand with us to grow our plants. And on top of that, I think the reduction of usage of insecticides, pesticides, and things like that also reduces the amount of chemicals that are getting run off when we water our plants. So that's less stuff going into the soil, into our water systems. And so it's kind of just like an overall healthy initiative that we have going on. So I love hearing about all of this.
I do have to talk on the insecticides really quickly, just because I don't want this misconception that we're just spraying
No,
every
no,
like
yeah,
DDT in here. We are not using
of course.
DDT. We're not using chemicals even remotely close to DDT. A lot of the chemicals that we use are newer generation chemicals, and these are highly targeted towards their organism. Unlike DDT, that just targeted and killed everything and was very broad spectrum,
Exactly.
most of the insecticides that we do use are extremely targeted towards, let's just say, aphids or spider mites or powdery mildew. We're
Mhm.
using highly targeted insecticides to prevent any impact we may have on the surrounding organism. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't want people thinking we're just like the picture with the kid getting hosed down with DDT. We're not doing that to the world.
Of course,
So
yes.
So speaking of insecticides, both kind of the natural / organic and the synthetic, I know a lot of people still wonder or ask about neonicotinoids.
oh yeah. Okay, I'll talk about that. Um, just leave it at that. Neonicotinoids. So they gained a lot of limelight in the past couple of years. Very famous in the media for their impact on pollinators, particularly honeybees. And so, we saw that, and we have actually removed neonicotinoids from our production. So we are not currently using those.
I'm sure many people will be very happy to hear that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Hey,
But
Michelle,
going back to ladybugs,
Thank you.
really quickly, just because it's Earth Day, and I know there's going to be, and with gardening and spring and summer coming, there's going to be a big surge to get these ladybugs. Those ladybugs that you see sold in little mesh baggies are, this is my opinion, this is not Costa Farms, this is Michelle opinion, are not the most sustainable option. And although a lot of people purchase these ladybugs thinking that they're doing good by using beneficials, and ladybugs are just like so wholesome and great, these ladybugs are not sustainably harvested, and they are not sustainably reared. So most of the ladybugs that you see in the mesh baggies that cost a whopping $3. First of all, alarm bells should go off in your head when you see that amount of ladybugs for $3, because that is not really an appropriate price for a lab reared organism. So these are collected from the wild in the Sierra Nevadas and then shipped all over the world. These are collected from dormant populations. So all of these ladybugs, when they go dormant, they huddle together. The aggregate pheromone, they all huddle together, and they are literally, not literally, but they are shoveled. I've never seen it metaphorically shoveled. I don't know how they're collected, vacuum shoveled, aspirated. I don't know. But they're collected from those groups, put into baggies, and shipped everywhere. Now, this is Hippodamia convergens, and it is a lady beetle that is found a lot in the United States. It's not, highly specific to one region or another, but those are highly specific to that region because they were collected in that region. And so when you ship those from the Sierra Nevadas to other areas, they don't know what to do. It's not their environment. And not to mention, you are removing this beneficial species from its environment. And then you don't know what's on them. We have collected ladybugs ourselves from our native environment. And we unfortunately found that there were parasitoids inside of these ladybugs. Parasitoids are little wasps. They lay an egg inside of another organism that hatches, kills the organism, emerges as another wasp, goes and kills another one. So our native ladybugs had these parasitoid wasps in them. I know that they probably also have fungi on them, bacteria in them that's native to this area, but what are those ladybugs carrying on them or in them? And how is that going to impact the other species and the other ladybugs in that area? So lab reared organisms, if you're going to purchase beneficials, lab reared beneficials are really the most sustainable, responsible, and safest way to go because they are clean, and you're not introducing something foreign. So ladybugs and mesh baggies, really cute concept. And I love, 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 love the enthusiasm that people have in getting ladybugs and getting beneficials. But I would just, maybe you can purchase ladybugs that are lab reared. They are available out there, not from us, but they are available out there. You can purchase lab reared ladybugs. So if you really want to have ladybugs, maybe purchase those. But we have our own ladybugs. They're native. We are growing them. They are clean now. um, and we're also using another method to keep our beneficials around, which is banker plants, which I think would be really, really interesting and good for the homeowner with a garden. Banker plants there's two kinds. I'll talk about the one that's more relevant to homeowners here. You can attract beneficials in with certain plants. I'm sure there's some people out there, and I'm sure people have heard about companion planting. These are either plants that repel pests or attract beneficials. This is a similar concept. Plants like alyssum or lobellaria will attract in hoverflies and syrphid flies, which, as we mentioned, the bird poop larva can eat aphids. Also, ornamental peppers, the black ornamental peppers, they attract in aureus, which is a minute pirate bug, and those guys will go to town on eating thrips. They can even honestly reproduce on the pepper pollen itself because of the protein content in that pollen. So we are also using banker plants at Costa in North Carolina, and it's proven to be very successful into attracting in a lot of those beneficials that may or may not have just hung outside of the greenhouse. We are luring them into the greenhouses, and then they're coming in, getting their nectar, getting their pollen, and we have seen the larval forms on our crops in the greenhouse. So they are reproducing in our greenhouses, which is really cool. And as a homeowner, you could do something similar if you want to attract in native beneficials. There's a whole lot of research out there. Make sure if you do plant something to attract in beneficials, just please make sure if you plant it into the ground, especially that it is something that is native to your area. You don't want to plant anything that is going to become a noxious weed.
Yes.
And rant. Justin, did that answer your question? I'm so sorry.
Yes, yeah, absolutely answered my question so much. So we talked about potting mix, which was obviously a really important part of plant growth. How about water?
So when it comes to water, I don't know if I know, Michelle, you have been in some of the greenhouses or shade houses, so you know it can get pretty hot, especially down here in Miami. The summers here are pretty brutal, so we have to make sure that all of our employees are hydrated. However, since we're farmers, a lot of our land sits outside of the urban boundaries, so we don't have access to the municipal water supplies. And for a while on our farms, we used RO systems, reverse osmosis systems for our water supplies. And that was just something that was adopted in the past by industries just to create a more consistent product when it comes to taste. They want their fountain drinks, like your sodas and soft drinks, to come out with the same flavor across the board, whether it's in Oregon, North Carolina, South Carolina, or Miami. But we realized that for every 1 gallon of RO water that was being produced, we were wasting about 3 to 4 gallons of water for that 1 gallon. And
That's
so
crazy.
Wow.
yes, imagine
Wow.
that. Just imagine as water being we have a lot of water scarcity all around the world, as we know. And so we thankfully made the switch to a different kind of regular filtered water. We made a switch to try to filter our water in a way that's not reverse osmosis, because it just makes a lot more sense. We don't want to waste all that water, and we've had to do a lot less upkeep on our machines because of this, which is great because we want to make sure that our water and ice machines are running consistently to make sure that our operations and our farmers are healthy and hydrated. And then when it comes to irrigation, for a while we right now we're doing some trials on a water optimizer, which um, we've installed in a couple of our cooling pads in the greenhouses to help kind of, I guess I'll say it in a way that it helps to kind of keep the material, as we know, as some of us may know, water has different kinds of minerals on it, but when you're pushing water through small pipes for a long period of time, it can start building up. And then once there's a lot of buildup, it causes water to move less efficiently, and also it can start depositing on our plants. And so in chunks, you might see some spots on some plants of calcium and things that are found in water. Yeah, so these optimizers are really cool because they use turbulence to shake the water up to kind of reorganize the water molecules so that these minerals are still coming out, but they're not depositing in large chunks on the plants. And so we're happy about that because the plants aren't getting that much buildup, so they're growing a little more happier, and we're using our water a lot more efficiently. And so that's something that we're continuing to look forward to using more of those on our farms.
That's exciting.
And speaking of carbon sequestration in the bogs that we were talking about earlier, I wanted to point out that we have a brand new project that we're trying to come up with. We're in the very preliminary stages of developing a project where we are determining how much carbon our plants are actually sequestering as we grow them. And so the goal is to produce some solid research and some numbers on this, because we've seen some publications here and there about it, but we want to we want to conduct an experiment specifically for us and the plants that we grow, and then hopefully be able to provide that information for our customers so they can see how they might be contributing to some carbon sequestration with the plants that
That's
they
very cool.
purchase.
Why should trees get all of the credit for pulling carbon out? Houseplants
Exactly.
do it too.
Yeah, houseplants, even gardens can be really cool carbon sinks. There are a lot of different ways that you can build an eco-friendly garden with vegetables. You can do your composting, lots of different ways to give back.
All right, guys. Any
That's
parting
good.
thoughts this Earth Day?
Be careful what bugs you kill out there.
Yes. Yes, I was actually
Uh,
going to say something about how biodiversity is very important, and to make sure that your native species or endemic species, which are species special to specific regions, are being taken care of. You can always take a look on your local websites and see what animals are being protected in your area, and plant a butterfly garden.
Or a pollinator, or not a pollinator, or a beneficial garden,
Yes.
or both.
Yes,
Doesn't
or
matter.
both.
2 for 1.
the more planting, the
And
better.
exactly. plant a tree, plant your gardens, plant a tree in your garden, which makes more sense.
Thank you so much, team.
Thank you.
Really loved hearing about all of these initiatives, many of which I didn't know about, here at Costa Farms.
Thank
Likewise.
you.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you so much for joining us, Erika.
Thank you for having me. I've been a big fan for ever since you guys started.
Oh,
So
thank
I'm
you.
Oh,
so
look, we have
excited
a
to be
fan.
here.
Justin,
If you
we have a fan.
if you didn't have one, if you didn't have any, now you have me. I'm just kidding.
Yay. I think it's you and my parents.
Aw.
I'm just kidding. I have no idea.
Excellent. Well, happy Earth Day, guys, and happy gardening to all of you from your friends at Costa Farms.
Thank you. Happy
Bye-bye.
Earth Day. Make sure you make Earth Day every day.